Delighted to have you join, and we expect that others will join as the event proceeds. We've got a wonderful lineup of speakers tonight, and I'm going to begin by inviting everybody who's not talking to keep their microphones off. We want to make it very informal and conversational, and I'm going to turn it over to Carmela Trombetta at my left. She's here with us, and some other community leaders at the Hamilton Club. Thank you, Hamilton Club, for generously hosting this evening. Carm will give us a bit of an opening welcome, and then we'll get on to the balance of the evening. Carm, would you like to come right here and sit down? Yeah.
Thanks, Lou. Good evening, everyone. I have to adjust this a little bit. It is an absolute pleasure to be here amongst this distinguished panel of guests tonight. And I'm also honored to be joined by my fellow RBC colleague, Karen Hayes. Thanks for joining, Karen. Do you want to say hello to everyone? Hey, Karen. It's been a long time since many of us have gathered in person due to the pandemic, and it feels good to just be here with a select few tonight, gathering on a really important forum. Most of you know, 135 years ago, RBC opened its first branch here in Hamilton. And since then, we've been very proud and active members of the community. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, 55 years ago, this wonderful family, the Paulettas, opened their first account with RBC, believe it or not. So it's a long relationship. And it's really great to be here with all of you, and especially the Paulettas. Many of our employees live and work and volunteer and support many events and causes in this great city. And I think that's what binds us tonight. We have seen the transformation of this city, including what opportunities still lie ahead of us, especially with the Commonwealth Games of 2026. The sense of pride that is instilled in the businesses and residents who are located here is nothing short of remarkable. And the Commonwealth Games is an important arena for developing athletes across the country, and events of this magnitude often provide valuable economic boost to the host community and region around them. That's what's at stake here. We know the past 6 months have been challenging to us all, both personally and professionally, yet through it all, we have seen a side of human spirit like never before. And in the true Hamilton fashion, when things get tough, we become even stronger and closer together. Tonight, I have a great honor of introducing an incredible Hamilton leader, Lou Fraporti, who is the chair of the 2026 Commonwealth Bidding Committee, and a huge driving force behind it amongst many others here tonight. And I would also like to extend a heartfelt thank you to the Pauletta family. Angelo, Paul, Michael are here with us tonight. Well, what can I say? Their contributions to this community and the surrounding community are just incredible, have been incredible, and they continue to go on. Especially on something like this that's so impactful and transformational for our whole community, and with the 2026 Commonwealth Games. They are champions of the community, and there's far too many causes for me to be talking about here tonight. Otherwise, we'd all be here all night just going through all of them. But seriously, thank you. So much gratitude for the efforts, the support, and leadership. One recent example of the caliber of these individuals is Angelo, you growing that beard. I mean, I still have dreams about that. Just, I don't know. I didn't want to say that, but you know, since COVID started, that doesn't keep these people away. Like, it just amps up the fundraising, and Angelo had a whole fundraising event for the hospital in Burlington for PPE equipment, and you know, many of us saw that beard keep growing and the money just keep being accumulating, and the family, of course, supporting that and being leading the charge there. So thank you. We're very, very thankful to have this opportunity, and not surprised at all that the Paulettas are leading the charge. Thank you, and over to you, Luz.
Thank you, Carm. Angela will speak on behalf of the Paletta family a little bit later, and the reason we're wanting to celebrate them this evening is that they principally, in their financial contribution to this volunteer committee, has been the reason why we've been able to do the work that's been required to put us in the position that we're in. So Angela will talk a little bit more about that later. What we'd like to do tonight is to introduce you to what is the hosting plan to this point. We had a presentation to a very large group of community folks at 4 o'clock, in which there was a dissertation, if you will, about the hosting plan, venues, budgets. PJ and Greg Maychuk will speak to that in a moment. We have Graham Cubitt here tonight, who will talk a little bit about the very innovative affordable housing plan that we're looking to advance as our primary legacy strategy. And then, of course, a variety of community leaders in the business community, particularly, who I think all of you know, or many of you do, as great contributors, both in terms of their entrepreneurialism and their charity and philanthropic work in this community. And to be perfectly candid with you, one of the things that you'll have to appreciate in this effort is that we are going to be asking, we're going to be depending, we're going to be needing our entrepreneurs and business community to help with this effort in a way that no other multi-games effort in Canada has experienced before, as the only way in which this is going to occur. All of us understand the pandemic and its economic impacts. All of you have felt it entrepreneurially in your families. But our effort to get out of that using this toolkit that the Federation has given us relies very significantly on the wit, ability, agility, the financial resources and acumen of our business community to lead. If we're not going to lead, this is not going to happen. And part of our resolve here this evening is to begin a conversation with you, urging you, inviting you, really pleading with you to step up and help us get this across the line as only our entrepreneurs and business community can. In turning it over to Greg to talk a little bit about the venue and hosting plan, just a couple of introduction and foundational points. The reason for 26, people ask that a lot. Why 26? Why can't we just focus on 30? Well, the reason for 26 was the pandemic. It isn't the reason not to do it. It is the very purpose of our doing it. And the reason it becomes such a significant opportunity in this at this time is because the Federation, for the first time ever, has yielded essentially its program, has given us the ability to work with it to actually craft a hosting program that makes sense now in the acceleration of resources and efforts around pandemic recovery. So whereas normally a community looks to resource a games bid, in this case, for the first time ever, a games bid is looking to resource a community. And so we have the ability to essentially adjust the commitments and plans that we have for venues and impact as events unfold, as resources come to the table. And part of that then is to get the feedback from our business community as to what you all think would be critical and necessary to invite conversations around how you think that you can help. Because we have the ability here with the Federation and senior levels of government to make adjustments on the fly to deliver a hosting program that makes sense, not only for the region in Hamilton, but an area well beyond it. So I'm excited then to turn this over to Mr. Maychuk, who is going to talk with you about our approach to venues. You'll be interested to hear, I think, what we've done in relation to venues. Many of you, I'm sure, will be familiar with all of the projects to varying degrees. And I think with that, I'm just going to shut my video and volume off and let Greg take over.
I hope you can all hear me. I'll keep things relatively brief in terms of what we presented earlier. But over the last 2 years, we worked with local architects, international venue experts, and some of the top people in the field of sport architecture. And I'm going to speak first to 3 main venues. The first one being an athletic complex on Hamilton Mountain. We're looking to replicate the original Civic Stadium that was built for the original games. But of course, it's going to be a modern facility with all the amenities, change rooms, meeting space, social space, with a 400-meter world-class track, and it will be accompanied by a warm-up track, and the stadium or complex will have 2,500 permanent seats. And last week I had the opportunity to meet with Ron Foxcroft. And in the event the games proceed, and in partnership with Athletics Canada, we're working on a plan to expand the facility with private sector expense to include an indoor track that could become the national training center for Athletics Canada. The second site I'm going to speak to is the Ancaster Multi-Sports Center. About a year ago, there was a feasibility study, and probably the greatest need in our community is the need for more gyms. So we're looking to build on the Redeemer Ancaster site a 9-gym facility with a show court that will play host to badminton in 2026. But following the games, it could also play host to sports like volleyball, basketball, and of course, pickleball for seniors. This facility will be operated by Redeemer and will work with their leadership, who has already committed both financially and the land to accommodate this venue. The third venue that I'll speak to is the McMaster Aquatic Complex. As some of you know, the McMaster pool is over 50 years old. It's actually the oldest 50-meter pool in all of Canada. We're going to transform it into a brand new world-class 50-meter, 10-lane competition pool. And then to meet the requirements, we're also going to have an 8-lane warm-up pool, but it will be designed so it can be converted post-games to a 25-meter pool and a hot tub that can be used by students, by families, by children, and used by the community at large. We're also delighted to partner with McMaster University in this project, who are also financially supporting this effort and will be involved with the operation of the pool post games. This plan has been in the works for over 30 years, and of course it's long overdue, and we're glad that the games could play a role in bringing a new facility to McMaster University. The next slide just speaks to the summary of all the other sport venues. The Hamilton Convention Center will be used for table tennis, and the International Broadcast Center and the main press center. Eastwood Arena and Park, and I know Ron will love this, will be a community hub and home to 9 internationally sanctioned outdoor 3-on-3 basketball courts. How cool is that in the heart of our city, fully accessible for Hamilton's youth? Confederation Park, it will play host to beach volleyball, a new field house, 10 courts, 1 show courts, and all the amenities like change rooms, storage, and both bleacher and patio seating. We'll also see improvements to the J.L. Greitmeyer Market Street Arena for boxing, the Dave Andrechuk Arena for netball, Tim Hortons Field for rugby sevens and the opening ceremonies, which of course was the original site of the first games for the opening and closing and athletics. Roadwork in Ancaster and Dundas for the time trials and road cycling events. And as you've heard a long time ago in the news, renovations to both First Ontario Arena and Concert Hall, host to the closing ceremonies, artistic gymnastics, and weightlifting. And I'll turn it over to PJ to talk a little bit about the financing and the budget.
Thanks, Greg. And before we get into the details that are on this slide, it's important to share that we wanted to design a proposed sport venue plan that is respectful to taxpayers and yields a high ROI for the city. And we believe our plan to be modest and affordable and not extravagant and excessive. And to put our 2026 plan into comparison to our 2030 venue plan, we were contemplating over $550 million worth of facility investments for 2030. And we have a new right-sized and optimized preferred venue plan coming in just under $250 million. So by pivoting to 2026, by regionalizing some of the sports to venues that already exist in Burlington, Milton, and the Niagara region, and being very selective in designing a venue plan that meets the needs of Hamilton's recreational community, we've cut $300 million from the previous sport venue budget. And these numbers have been prepared by PCL Construction, vetted by Turner & Townsend cost estimators, and then vetted again by the Commonwealth Games Federation venue experts who do this for a living. And on this slide, you'll see on the right column that we've identified who will be responsible for the ongoing operating costs of these new or renovated facilities post games. For the most significant venues with strong capital allocations, ongoing operating responsibilities will be transferred to the private sector, to educational institutions like McMaster or Redeemer. And in the event there are facilities that will remain in the city's domain, there will be a games legacy fund that will be a part of the operating budget that will ensure that ongoing operating commitments are covered, and covered not by the taxpayer, but covered by this fund. And that was the case in 2015 with the Pan Am Games, where a dedicated legacy fund was created to ensure that the Milton Velodrome and the Pan Am Sports Complex in Markham had their costs covered by this fund to ensure that those municipalities were not affected. And a similar situation would be in place for Hamilton. And on the next slide, you'll see that we have fallback venue options in the event that, after consultation with various community and government stakeholders, if folks do not want to fund some specific venues, that we have less expensive alternatives to consider that are regional. And these low-cost options would have a capital budget come in at about $175 million, which would be then a almost $400 million departure from the original 2030 games. And so we, and just to give you an example of that, in the event that athletics wasn't, able to happen in Hamilton, Brock University would be in a position to support with that specific sport. And on the next slide, my last slide, as it relates to the funding breakdown for our preferred venue capital options, as you will see here, there is a substantial reliance on the private sector and institutional partners. And these would be the highest proportion of private sector and institutional investment into any games capital plan. There would also be no new funding from the city that would impact taxpayers. And instead, there would be a reliance on existing city funding allocations where possible, and the 10-year capital plan being an example of that, as well as the Future Fund, which was used to help fund the Tim Hortons Field new construction. And the overall percentage of funding for these capital venues, as you can see from this slide here, 50% would come from a combination of the federal and provincial government, 36% would come from private sector and educational institutions, and 14% would come from the city of Hamilton for dollars that they are already arguably going to be investing into infrastructure. And that's an important point to make. The city's going to be investing into road work in Ancaster and Dundas, and those types of investments would count towards the city's investments in the games. And while I don't have a slide that speaks to the operating budget, it's important to emphasize that there would be no new operating costs to the city born out of this because of the fact that the Games Legacy Fund would cover ongoing operating commitments. And one of our goals of the Games Legacy Fund is also to assume the financial obligations that the city currently invests in the Recreation Assistance Fee Program, where underprivileged folks that can't access sports facilities, there's right now, as part of the city's annual budget, approximately $400,000 per year that the city helps underprivileged children to access sport programs. So as part of this Commonwealth Games initiative, we would want our legacy fund to assume that financial responsibility, which would then save approximately $400,000 per year from the city's operating budget, which would be in over a 20-year time window, around an $8 million cost savings. So, in terms of the other parts of the operating budget, we will be negotiating with the federal government, provincial government, municipal government, along with the Commonwealth Games Federation around how to right-size certain operating lines, especially in the area of security, which we believe there to be tremendous opportunity to come at a much lower number. And any obligations that the city would have related to the operating side could be in-kind contributions by the city of Hamilton, not necessarily cash contributions. And just to give you one example of that, you know, the Greitmeyer Arena in Dundas would be used for boxing. As part of the city contribution, they could say, hey, we'll waive the rental fee at that venue so long as you cover the labor costs. That's an example of an operating cost that is a substantial line item in our Commonwealth Games budget that could be covered off in kind by the city. So we feel that we've got a very economical, responsive capital and operating plan that we believe council will be delighted to hear, but we obviously wanted to share it with all of you first to get your feedback. So those are the comments that I wanted to make related to the capital plan and operating budget. So Lou, over to you, and happy to answer any questions at the conclusion of the presentation.
A couple of things just arising from the budget conversation. I think one of the problems that we've had challenges is in the fact that there isn't a general understanding, understandably, of what happened during Pan Am. And it's very much the case at the Pan Am model, and we've had the benefit now of the former leader of Pan Am working with us, along with others, to unpack it and to understand how it can be deployed in these circumstances with the cooperation of the rights holder to serve our interests. In Pan Am, you know, there was a total budget, including the affordable housing and village components, that was in the $2.5 billion range. The Games itself was in the $1.7 billion range. The Secretariat, which was an entity set up by the province for the purposes of controlling and running the operation, which of course led to the creation of a host co, entered into agreements with a variety of the municipalities that hosted venues for the purposes of running the Games. We anticipate the same model to carry here. Why is that important? It's important then to understand that because the city of Hamilton, although having an unusually high degree of control potentially over this opportunity, won't be the only municipality that will be partnering. And in fact, each municipality will have to enter into agreements with the Secretariat or hosting entity for the purposes of delivering within the venue sites in their regions. And we are looking to include and will the Niagara area, Brampton, Burlington, Milton, and others within this, all of whom will have to participate and assume responsibility in conjunction with the province and federal government of operating costs in their municipalities. So, you know, when you look at the balance sheet, and all of you are familiar with balance sheets and P&Ls, you'll deal with this every day. The reality is that we're looking at it through the prism of Hamilton, but the balance sheet won't be Hamilton's balance sheet at the end. It'll be another entity of which Hamilton will have a portion of responsibility, but operationally, the Pan Am model provided that hosting entity was responsible for operational costs. The municipalities contracted to deliver their standard level of municipal services during the game, and then the municipalities provided contributions to capital costs in their jurisdiction. I think it's the case that at $2.7 billion, the City of Toronto paid under $100 million. When you think of the value proposition for the City of Hamilton on a much smaller total budget, obviously, the benefits and return on that investment is remarkable if we can get this over the line. And lastly, point I mentioned earlier, there's enormous skepticism and concern about the impacts on our municipal balance sheet. We've constructed a hosting plan here that relieves responsibility for almost the entirety of the Hamilton deliverables from the Hamilton budget, with the exception of currently accessible or available funds. But we're not asking anybody to take our word for it. So we went to the city and invited them to have their auditors look at our venue plan and capital budgets to scrutinize them and to prepare an independent assessment. And they will do that in due course, so everybody can get some comfort that the projections and plans that we have around the infrastructure spending won't have any, in fact, will have impacts on the municipal levy, but we think ultimately positive ones as it relates to sports venues. So with that, I'm going to turn it over just to give everybody a heads up. Graham Cubitt next will speak about our innovative work around affordable housing. And then I'm going to invite Kevin Sandy, if he's on, to speak about our in partnership with Indigenous communities.
Great. Thanks very much, Lou. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I know some of you, I've met some of you, and many of you have not yet met, so appreciate the opportunity to be here. Many of you are familiar with Indwell already, and or may have heard of us in one way or another. We've been in Hamilton for about 45 years. Started as a small charity out of the home of our founders, John and Cindy Prinzen, and really had a focus on providing supportive housing for people who were living with mental health or addiction issues as they came out of institutions. Long story short, over the last decade or so, we reinvented ourselves from being a small group home operator to being at the forefront now of actually development in Ontario and indeed Canada of high performance new construction multi-residential buildings. We're still committed to our mission of creating hope and homes for all. And as part of that, are constantly looking for opportunities to create new rental housing that's deeply affordable, but also offers people the ability to, participate to their maximum potential in the life of their community. Some of you have seen some of these buildings that we've done in Hamilton. Rudy House Commons in East Hamilton. This is a building that just opened last week or a couple weeks ago in North Hamilton called North End Landing. That was actually a partnership with Houston Street Baptist Church. And, as you were talking about facilities, PJ, I'm thinking maybe the new gymnasium there might be a venue for some of the sports or practice facilities. This is a project in East Hamilton. The old Driftwood nightclub got converted to the Perkins Center. We just converted the old George and Mary's Tavern in East Hamilton and are building a second phase there. We've done old projects that converted the Harvey Woods Knitting Mill, for instance, in Woodstock. And we've got some new projects underway here in Hamilton as well. The old Royal Oak Dairy is under construction now, and it's going to become this complex. In Mississauga, we're working on some projects there and expanding as we grow into other parts of Ontario. The key thing that we're seeing is that every community has an opportunity to, has a dramatic need for affordable housing and has an opportunity to really demonstrate that when a community comes together, very new and very progressive and innovative solutions are possible. This is what really attracted us to, not so much this slide, but this vision is what attracted us to participating in this Commonwealth Games bid. And the whole idea of why would we as a charity want to get involved in a games bid is because every time we see an opportunity to invest in the public good, to take any kind of public investment from any level of government, combine that with the strategic leadership of the private sector and the permanent value that we know we can create through this type of housing development, we want to say at least we'll at least take a look at it. So when we sat down and talked with Lou and the rest of the team about, what would a housing legacy look like? What could be possible through the Commonwealth Games? Obviously, there's housing needs for the games, the athletes, the officials, folks who are working to make the games happen. It needs a lot of housing. And, if there was a way that we could make sure that any new housing that was built has permanent, long-lasting legacy to actually help us address Hamilton's housing crisis, we said we're interested in being there. This is sort of a working draft of a concept that says, how do we actually create 3,000 new affordable homes in Hamilton in time for the 2026 games, obviously, but with long-lasting, permanent benefit to our community. 6,000 households are on the housing waiting list, so something like this could actually cut that in half. The CMHC or the federal government in whatever form plays a key role in creating affordable housing, and there's no question that would be a core anchor contribution here. The province plays a role, and what that role is always up for discussion. If we look at the example from Pan Am in Toronto, they made a much larger investment and got a much smaller number of units. So maybe we can one up Toronto once again as Hamilton. Our community plays a key role. Every one of our projects actually has been led by a key gift or a key strategy of campaign of giving by the private sector. One of our recent projects had about $4 million towards the $15 million donated upfront by the community that says, it's kind of reverse NIMBYism. It proves that, yes, the community's on board before we actually get started. And so that's the kind of strategy that we said, what's possible. We root our projects, though, not in some sort of silver bullet mega project kind of philosophy, but actually right at the grassroots. This is the community picnic we had the day we took over Royal Oak Stables. It's a derelict brownfield site in central Hamilton. 300 people showed up for a community barbecue and bands and everything, because everyone knows the need for affordable housing and everybody wants hope that there's something possible to be done about it. And when you can turn that kind of pent-up desire and demand and hope into something real, people get on board with that. And we think the same thing's possible for the Commonwealth Games, and how housing can actually be a catalyst for bringing people on board to really see the value of the games. You know, we're also committed to Indigenous reconciliation as an organization. You know, we are a Christian charity rooted in the Christian tradition, but we don't discriminate in our tenants or in our employment or whatever. But we do know that disproportionately Indigenous people in Hamilton do face homelessness, do face stigmatization and racism. And how can we as an organization actively learn and unlearn some of the practices that, learn about these issues and unlearn some of the practices that we've been, you know, maybe even tacitly participating in. So this project, North End Land, or this is McQuestion Lofts at Parkdale and Barton, is actually committed as a partnership with Deidwa Dedesne, the Aboriginal Health Center and Native Women's Center. And 20% of the tenants in this program will be Indigenous people who've experienced homelessness. So it's that kind of rooted ethos that we want to bring to this Commonwealth Games housing legacy. Practical, demonstrated, delivered results that are going to be a key part of addressing the housing crisis that we're experiencing here in Hamilton. So that, you know, when we have these kind of events, and we've got our federal partners there, and we've got our constructors, we've got our tenants, we've got you know, our volunteers from the community, we've got our civic leaders of each level, that together we're actually celebrating what's possible as a community when we all contribute. So that's the vision that we are part of, and that's the vision we believe is possible through the Commonwealth Games housing legacy, affordable housing legacy. And so we're keen to be a catalyst, play a catalyst role in that.
Thanks, Graham. I do want to point out, some of you may have noticed that Minister Philomena Tassi was in the last picture that Graham showed, and I think all of us who are working on the games cannot speak highly enough of how the minister has been supportive in encouraging us forward and in working with us. When we first were contacted by the Federation to consider the pivot to 26, we reached out and spoke with both senior levels of government, and both encouraged us forward. As Brian McPherson, the head of Commonwealth Sport Canada, mentioned on August 10th in his presentation to Council, the federal government has indicated its support for Hamilton in 26, pending the province expressing their support. And we're very encouraged by our recent engagement with the province, that it ultimately will appreciate the value of this for the entire region and for Hamilton in areas of housing and in others. So that's an encouraging development. And the folks at Inwell have been unbelievable in terms of the contribution and effort that they've made, and their willingness to take a chance in working with us and devoting their energy and resources to supporting the strategy for the games. So we can't thank them enough. And we're looking forward to working with them, coming to all of you as business leaders to see how it is that you can help in incenting the federal and provincial governments to invest extra in Hamilton and affordable housing as a consequence of all the games that bring with it. So I'm hoping that Kevin, are you on? I can't see on my screen, and I'm hoping that you'll pop up with your video and audio. And if
I'm here.
Wonderful. Yeah. So as Graham alluded to, one of the things that has really been most rewarding in our work has been the opportunity to meet with Kevin and a variety of his community members, and to prioritize and make our Indigenous communities key strategic partners in our ambitions towards the game. And you're going to love, I think, what it is that Kevin has to communicate. It's given us an enormous encouragement and spirit to move forward through some exhaustion, and I'm delighted to turn it over to him right now. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. Yeah. You know, Scano, Swakwego, Kevin, Sandy. Oh, hold on. Am I there? Yep. Okay, I'm here. Just wanted to give you an introduction to our community of 6 nations. We're a community of about 27,599 individuals, comprised of Seneca Nation, Mohawk Nation, Huga Nation, Oneida Nation, Onondaga Nation, and Tuscarora Nation. And I guess population-wise, I guess we are one of the largest Ungwe communities in Canada. And I think with that comes a lot of knowledge, comes a lot of business opportunity, really. And a lot of that is rooted in our spirituality and our connection to our game, that we call Iroquois in my language. It's a medicine game. It's a healing game. It's a game that was used to settle disputes. It was a game that's used for honor and respect to to utilize, I guess, as fun, joy, and excitement. And I think that's the spectacle that you get with any type of sport. We'll say cultural sport events such as the Commonwealth Games. And I was fortunate, I said, to be involved in the 2018 down in Gold Coast, as well as other events, North American Indigenous Games and Pan Am Games in 2015 and previously. But what I see, I guess, from my lens as a Ungwe business person and as a community member is the opportunity. My community of 27,000 plus really has a vibrant millennial population. Probably the majority of it is between the ages of 23 and 38 and younger. We are the fastest growing demographic in North America. And to me, that really represents opportunities. What does that mean for my community? What does that mean for the city of Hamilton? What does that mean in terms of setting up strategic partnerships going forward? To me, it really means that it's toward transferring knowledge. I think a lot of people, even on this call, don't understand and realize that the Indigenous marketplace is a $40 billion industry in Canada. And in my community alone, we have 500 plus businesses and growing. Every year, we have professional architects, we have professional engineers, we have teachers, we have lawyers, we have doctors, we have dentists, we have contractors. You can run the gamut. Basically, we're a small community, I guess, relative to the scope and size of Hamilton. I says, but in terms of the volume of business that we're doing, it's actually very significant, and that significance actually, to me, economically output results in hundreds of millions of dollars actually being spent not only within this community but outside of our community that supports a lot of jobs and training opportunities. And I think that's something that I want to talk a little bit about, because I think for us it's the opportunity and I guess expanding the education and awareness that's out there, and in terms of what the role I think that we play, and not only in managing, we'll say, the social impacts. And I really love the presentation on affordable housing, because in my community that's a huge and significant need, with a 10-year waiting list plus like just to get on to secure housing. So that's something I said that's important to us, but also the quality of water that we have in our community in this day of 2020 is also significant for me. But the other part to me that I see as a business owner for 20 plus years now is the opportunity for job creation and partnerships, and taking a look at what's happening. What does that partnership look like? Not only between the private sector, but the public sector. And the public sector is actually plays a huge role in the construct of cultural sport events and such as this. And I think the opportunity to me relies in the collaboration, the joint ventures that can be created between communities. And I think for me, if you look at the $40 billion industry that we're part of in six nations, just by vast virtue of our population, plays a significant contribution. And that industry over the next 5 years is going to grow about 3, 4, or 5 times. And it becomes even more significant to Canada as a whole, and even our bordering municipalities, Haldeman, the city of Hamilton, where we have a very vibrant urban Indigenous population as well, who are working on urban Indigenous strategy. And I think that's the part that I'm excited about in working, I guess, with my community partners and in my community, because that's what I said. I'm here to really talk about that opportunity. Like, our business community is growing 5 times faster than general Canadian population. Indigenous women is growing 5 times faster than the general Canadian population. So to me, that represents significant opportunities, and those opportunities are in jobs. We have professional contractors, subcontracting opportunities, but also the other part that I really like, and we were involved in this in Pan Am, was around cultural education and awareness, and the significance, I says, of our contribution to games. The games actually play a significant role in our lives, not only socially, but economically, but as a community. And I think that's something that I really want to look at from exploring those social development opportunities, as well as opportunities in mentorship. And I think it's really important for us to all examine and look at that, I think, as a people. And for me, like the nation to nation business that we can be doing, we'll say the nation to municipality business that we can be doing, the nation to the urban indigenous population that we can be doing, lends itself very well for what we are embarking upon as a community. And I think this is something that I've talked a lot with some of our local business leaders as well, and some of them at the grassroots level. And I think it's just the opportunity really that lends itself very well to what we're doing, not only now, what we're going to be doing into the future. And everything is, like I mentioned before, is rooted in our way of life and in our teachings. And that's something that was given to me. My dad worked a lot in Hamilton, probably most of his life in Hamilton in the steel industry. My mom was a teacher. And I think that the aspect that they always impressed upon us is to work hard. I think everyone has that sort of mentality that I know, like you say, in the city of Hamilton and in my community is let's enhance and improve the quality of life for our people. And how do we do that? We do that by working together and collaborating and taking a look at what can be done, what is possible, and not to look at it from a deficit standpoint. I'm a true believer. I'm a visionary, and getting involved in these games to me, this represents a tremendous opportunity. I'd rather look at the ABCDs of asset management. We grow from our strengths. We respect our deficiencies, our weaknesses, but we grow from the knowledge that we put forth, the skills that we have, the abilities, our experiences, our education, and that's how we collaborate. And that's in my teachings. Like you say, that's in my teachings. When I wake up every morning, I will do a ganohanyo, and that ganohanyo is me connected to a Wednesday, our Mother, the Earth, who gifts us with everything. And that's the love that I have, not only for my children, but my family, extended family, and my nations of people that are here in our beautiful community. And that's the same love and generosity and appreciation and respect that we have for our neighbors. And I think that's really what I see as the opportunity, is that opportunity to really take a look and expand what we're doing. I know what the vision is. This community has a vision as well, and I think it's really kind of merging that together and saying, hey, what is possible? What can we do? What can be done in our community? Our community has a significant Six Nations Parks and Recreation Master Plan, and we've hosted world events. We've hosted OFSA here. We've hosted a World Indigenous People Conference on education. We've hosted North American Indigenous Games, international games. And our sister community, Onondaga Nation, did it in 2015 for the World Indoor Lacrosse Championships, and they invested a significant amount of resources into it. And this, to me, would be the same type of event, and just the magnitude of it is wonderful. But getting involved now, to me, just creates those opportunities I had mentioned earlier, and I think that's that part of that knowledge exchange that we will continue to do and we always do. And it's just about opportunity. The sport in itself, like I say, I know it's a medicine game. I know it's a healing game, but also with that sport represents an opportunity for not only coaches, athletes, mentorship, apprentices, contractors, but for the athletes. We have a significant number of athletes. Sport is, like you say, awesome out here in our community. Even we can't play it right now, I said, but we took a continue to find opportunities, and seeing the Untitled Indigenous team as part of 2026 playing our game in our community would be huge. It's welcoming the world. It'd be welcoming the world to us, and I think that's what I see. It's opening us up to the world of possibilities, and to me, it just was taught a lot to me. It says growth to me is really about well-executed plan, well-executed strategy, but taking that action to move it forward and make it happen. Yeah, means thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Kevin. I think for all of us on the bid team, one of the great blessings of the last few months is being exposed to and having the privilege of working with and learning from a variety of leaders in the community that we had never met before. Kevin and his community members have been an incredible example of that. So Lacrosse will be medaled for the first time in Commonwealth Games history. In 26, if we advance the games, the Iroquois Nation will compete as its own sovereign entity, and we couldn't be more excited about that possibility. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Foxcroft. I think all of you know Ron, very long-standing community leader, somebody whose commitments, sacrifices, and influence here in this region have been significant. It's a driving force and a supporter from the beginning in relation to the games, and we're delighted to have him speak and share his perspective on the opportunity from his experience here in Hamilton. So Ron, can I turn over to you and let you take it from here?
Thank you very much, Lou. And I know you have a full agenda. I'll respect that, and I'll keep this as brief as I possibly can. I am really supportive of these international games, Commonwealth Games, because I was a participant as an official in the Commonwealth Games and other international games, and I respect that this is a world-class opportunity for the athletes to perform, coaches to perform, referees to perform, and so on. I also realize that these international games are all about a legacy, a community legacy. But before I go any further, I just want to thank three people. Lou, you have been a champion quarterback for this entire bid. You've put your whole life into this thing for the last 2 or 3 years. PJ, I really appreciate and respect that you respect the financial end of this bid, and you've laid your presentation out perfectly. Nobody in Hamilton appreciates where we are in the shortage of athletic venues more than Greg Maychek, and your presentation was fantastic. And before I go on, I also want to mention and thank the Paletta family. The Paletta family have stepped up, as they always will. The Paletta family are very emotional to me because my very first commercial real estate deal was with Pat Paletta 40 years ago on a napkin with a handshake. And that's the type of people the Paletta family are. They don't talk, they step up, and they're action people. The fact that the Paletta family have stepped up on this bid is going to be levered by the rest of the business community. So this is all about legacy and the infrastructure that this event will leave in our wonderful community of Hamilton. It's about building the legacy. What has really attracted me was the lead legacy, the affordable housing. The Indwell presentation was fantastic. I won't repeat that, but I did do a little bit of homework and realize, and it's been confirmed tonight, there's 6,000 people on the affordable housing wait list. If by winning these games and winning this bid and putting on the Commonwealth Games in Hamilton, Ontario, if we made an impact and cut that waiting list by 3,000 people with affordable housing, which will obviously start out by being an athlete's village. This is a huge, huge impact, a legacy that cannot be ignored. The other thing, and Greg has laid it out, Greg understands, and us people that are in the business of sport understand that our venues, either there's a shortage of venues in Hamilton, they need upgrades, or in the case of Iroquois Stadium, it was going to cost us probably north of $100 million just to renovate Iroquois Stadium, notwithstanding the fact that it was probably a few years away from perhaps being condemned as the concrete pillars were falling on our cars. So there's a shortage of venues, we need upgrades, and some of the venues have lived their athletic life. Greg, you laid it out. We have been trying for decades to get an Olympic-sized pool. Now is the opportunity. The athletic complex, the track and field people have, to say it bluntly, they've been ignored. track is very important because kids, when there's financial constraints, can go to school in running shoes and participate in track wearing those same running shoes. So the athletic complex with the track is important. We also need that multi-sport complex. Obviously, the volleyball courts, basketball courts, and all the courts and fields that we have a tremendous shortage of. And if I could just go into something too that we cannot ignore. These games, and this has been calculated by a professional accounting firm that are in the business of explaining to us about a return on the investment. The economic benefit that these games can bring to the city of Hamilton is $350 million. That number is a serious number, and it cannot be ignored. I look at it's going to cost money to put on the bid, to put on this event. But I don't really look at it as expense. I look at it as an investment with an enormous return on the investment. Finally, I'll finish, and this is how I see the opportunities. Number one, these games are going to bring jobs. We need jobs. We have the federal minister of labor right here in Hamilton. She has been a hero on this bid, but she has communicated to all of us, Hamilton and Canada, we need good paying jobs. These games bring jobs, construction jobs, etc. It brings economic benefit. It brings tourism benefit. It brings a profile that we cannot afford to really expense other than bringing the games and creating a profile. It's a life-changing opportunity for our community. Finally, you know, we're two things in Hamilton. A, we are a tiger cat town. Number two, we're a sport volunteer town. We put on international sporting events better than any town in this country because our volunteers, they respect the needs of the athletes, coaches, and referees. Our volunteers in Hamilton are well trained. And if they're not well trained, Cecilia Carter-Smith will make sure they're trained. So it brings all these opportunities and also an opportunity for Canadian athletes to participate on their homeland. So I just want to say thank you to Lou, PJ, Greg, for carrying the load on this bid and accepting the privilege to produce this amazing bid. Thank you very much, and I'll turn it over back to Lou.
Thanks, Ron. It should occur to everybody that what a day when Kevin Sandy and Ron Foxcroft are speaking from the same entrepreneurial song sheet. And I think that's going to be heard over and over tonight. I'd like to introduce now the very intrepid and incredibly energetic president and head of our Chamber of Commerce, Keanin Loomis, who I'm delighted to say is going to share some thoughts with us this evening. Keanin?
Thanks, Lou. I really appreciate being a part of this, and I thank PJ as well. I know that I've really hit the big time when Ron Foxcroft is my warm-up act. So I want to just say that, you know, and admit that when I first heard about this bid a few years ago, I was skeptical. And a lot of that, it didn't have anything to do with the people behind it because they're incredible people, as we all know, and they're members of the chamber and people of high integrity that I respect greatly, but because obviously it's a bidding process. And as well, we know that large games have come with a lot of scrutiny over the last couple of decades, and you know, Atlanta being one, and there's so many others, right, of communities that basically didn't end up getting what they were promised, and we've alluded to Pan Am as being something that we were promised a lot, and we ended up not getting a whole heck of a lot, and we left disappointed as a result. But you know, when I see not only what was presented tonight in terms of, you know, the type of legacy that we can expect as a result of this effort. But when I know that, you know, given that we basically have this in hand if we wanted, and if we can motivate higher tiers of government as well, and how closely how close it is to our grasp, I can't help but think that we would be absolutely foolish to pass up this opportunity at this point in time. And, you know, we mentioned all of the really important assets that would come as a result of this investment. Athletic center, convention center, arena, pool, affordable housing. All of those are things that we absolutely need right now, independent of whether we have or go for the Commonwealth Games. That's what a city of 550,000 people deserves to have. There's not one white elephant among that list of key infrastructural projects that will be delivered to this community. And the one that was not mentioned, hasn't been mentioned, and I know that there's a little reticence in doing this, but I don't think any of this works as well. I don't think we will be successful in hosting if we don't also have our LRT project up and running by the time that we're hosting these games. So when I look at all of that, and the fact that we have maximum leverage and minimized burden, I think that this is an incredibly exciting opportunity for Hamilton, and absolutely once in a lifetime. And I'll just leave with this, that, you know, if we do get this, what really excites me is thinking about the next 5 years in Hamilton. And so COVID has delivered us, you know, obviously the world a really bad hand, but it's also in this case provided us with a really great opportunity. And not only that, but we really need something to amplify and energize the local workforce, and this is the perfect prescription to do so. And I can't imagine all of that list of all of those assets. First of all, I do. My one question is, are we actually capable of doing all of that at the same time? But I'm going to assume that we are, and that we've worked that out, and the engineers will take care of that. But that's a really exciting next 5 years in Hamilton. And that means that we will have put COVID well behind us. And this will be one of the most energized and dynamic cities in all of Canada, because all three levels of government decided this is where we're going to place a huge bet on not just Hamilton, but Ontario and on Canada as well. And I'll just leave with this one final thought, and I think we got this from the folks in Manchester. One of the quotes that was in some of the literature that's been provided. They said that games introduced a generation of development to that city in just 5 years. And that's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what we would be looking at if we do get this game. So I think obviously the big important thing is that we have to get the province on board. I think that you know, the skepticism, the scrutiny that has this bid has elicited have made this bid a healthier bid as a result. And I give great credit to the bid team for listening and for making this a really incredible bid, and in doing so, not just in a way that's where they're checking boxes, but in really truly engaging all of the key stakeholders that are required to successfully host this. So whatever you need from the chamber in this, we've done a lot of advocacy already. We will continue to do so, and I wish us all the best of luck in the coming next couple months, because they're going to be really crucial to the next 5 years plus in Hamilton's history.
Thanks, Keanin. Very much appreciated those words. A few of us still have difficulty getting our heads around 71 nations, 1.5 billion people watching the city of Hamilton for a 2-week period, and all that comes leading up to it and after. One of the many other local entrepreneurs, I think, whose business, and Jason, I'm just going to give you a heads up right now, I'm going to call on you in a second, that has been such an incredible contributor in recent years to the vibrancy of our downtown community. from a culinary perspective and in hospitality. And, obviously a business vertical in our region, like everywhere else, that has suffered so incredibly in recent months is Jason Cassis of Equal Parts. And I've gotten to know Jason very well in the last few months. He has illuminated my thinking, as PJ has, around the contributions and importance of our hospitality industry. And I'm delighted to have Jason say a few words and reflect on the games and what it might present for those working in his industry. Jason?
Thanks, Lou. Thanks for having me. And I got to tell you, after listening to these presentations, I feel very good that we're in very good hands with this volunteer team that is bringing the bid to Hamilton. I've learned so much about the bid. Originally, when I'd heard about the games, I wasn't as excited because I thought about the games in the context of a 2-week window or a 1-week window, and that how could games really, contribute to the restaurant industry outside of perhaps, no different than the TICAC games or First Ontario Chili Peppers concert. But then digging into it, I realized that it's not really just about the games. It's about the amenities, and it's about the community and the culture and the legacy of having the games. And being on the spotlight of everyone globally is very important. The immediate impact on the games when the games happen is obvious, as I said. Getting beyond that, when you think in terms of large-scale cities around the world that we all love to visit, think London or Las Vegas or Paris or Rome, these cities have tremendous hospitality assets. And in the last 6 or 7 years, as an example, when I opened up the Aberdeen Tavern 7 years ago, we were one of the first full-service dining rooms to open in this community in a very long time. And this community was coming out of a economic downturn over decades, and saw it thrive with a brand new crop of restaurants and hospitality assets, from hotels to ramen noodles, to Italian restaurants, to even a French place. We have it all now in Hamilton. And I think that you have to think about the games in the same context, in that the games themselves are the reason that we're coming together, but all of the things that surround those games are all of those legacy amenities. And not to mention what I learned tonight about Indwell and the affordable housing. Our workers require affordable housing. People get into our business because they love cooking, they love serving, they love things like that. They love serving the likes of all of us, and that's really important to keep housing in check in terms of the core. So as we, as an industry, along with PJ and others, continue to build out the infrastructure of these amenities, we require the support of large venues, whether they be a swim meet, whether they be something at a convention center, whether they be a games like this, a global games. And that, to me, is why we need to do this. There is no one silver bullet that says that this city only should be focusing on one thing at a time. The city should be, as Keanin put it, let's focus on multiple things at a time, such as an LRT, such as Pan Am Games, such as affordable housing, such as the next hot restaurant that opens up somewhere in this town, because it's supported by the likes of all of those things. So Lou and the team, thank you very much for putting this in front of Hamilton, and you've got our support 100%, and I look forward to supporting in any way that I can, and that's it.
Thank you, Jason. This is very gracious and kind and thoughtful, and the impacts on hospitality is something that we look forward to sharing more about as we go forward, is a key vertical for us in the delivery of benefit. And on that point, we focus on 26, but it's important for everybody to understand that in our initial discussions with Commonwealth Sport, we were offered or invited to consider our ability to have not only the hosting ability in 26, but to have a significant celebratory role in 2030. And so we're looking at event programming that extends from 24-25, when facilities are available, all the way through to 2030 and beyond, as a way of maximizing the return on investment in these initial few years. So I'm going to turn it over right now to a former partner and colleague and friend, he's a current friend, but a former partner of mine, Bob Wilkins, who, along with Bill Walker and others in Ancaster, have made significant investments in that community, in culture and arts. I have a long history of sports in this community, and I'm delighted to have Bob share a few words and share his perspective on what the Commonwealth Games can bring. Bob?
Thank you very much, Lou. I appreciate being able to say words, and I'm most impressed with all the effort and the work that's been done so far by the committee. Fabulous. So first of all, after reading everything I can on it, I am a supporter of the Games. I think it's going to be an incredible economic driver for the city. And if you look at it on a cost-benefit analysis, and you look at all the money that's coming to Hamilton region, Hamilton, Burlington, and you realize that, just say, you look at the numbers compared to what Hamilton has to put in, and you look at the capital contribution of $75 million from the public, is it doable? I say, yes, it is doable. And I think that, and then you look at the legacy benefits of all this infrastructure for sports and the affordable housing. You add all those pieces up and you say, oh my goodness, it is an investment, Ron. You're right, it's a fabulous investment. It's got legacy benefits. Now, the one thing I haven't heard about tonight is you're just talking about economic legacy benefits, and you haven't gone to a really, really important part. And that is, my dad was a sprinter. My dad was a coach of track and field, cross country, president of Hamilton Olympic Club for 20 years, coach Mac track for 19 years, was chair of the Canusa Games for most of my life as a boy growing up. And so I had the advantage of all the time of having people come and get billeted in our house from the Canusa Games and me go elsewhere. And the wonderful thing was that there was no race, there's no black and white, there was no color, there was no rich, there was no poor. These were all athletes and people that love sports. We had a common denominator, something we need in the world, something we really need in the world. And our legacy can be, part of our legacy can be is that we have the next 5 years to convince everybody in Hamilton that we have an opportunity to be kind, we have an opportunity to be respectful, we can get ready to receive the world in our door and have the world treated in such a manner that when they leave this city, not only will they think it's incredibly beautiful, which I do, and they'll think, my goodness, I felt really well treated there. And when they leave the city, we want them to say, boy, those games are really well run. My goodness, what a place to put a city at the end of the lake in the valley. Isn't that beautiful? I got to come back here again. I got to come back here again. And then at the end of the day, they'll say, but you know what the most beautiful thing was of this whole thing? That was the people. Those people in Hamilton, Burlington area, they treated us with such great respect as human beings. They can take that back to their home, and hopefully that can add to something about the fact that we're all part of the human race, 99.7% the same DNA. We've got to get closer to that. And this is a legacy opportunity with 700,000 million people in Hamilton, Burlington area to be able to buy in on that and to be able to grab hold of that and to do something that is lasting. So Lou, nice work, guys. This is incredible. I think it'll be a immediate economic driver. It'll be a capital legacy driver and gives us an opportunity to make the world a better place if we can. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. That's greatly appreciated, and as always, from the heart. Just before inviting Angelo Paletta to speak, I want to tell you a little bit about the family being here tonight. In this moment, when all of us in the bid team went through the 2030 process, we were all community volunteers. In the city's prior effort at securing the games, they had funding of millions and a large staff. In our effort, we've had no funding and no professional staff, just a bunch of community volunteers. At the end of the 2030 bid process, we all took a breath. We're delighted to have completed that. We were successful, obviously, in securing senior levels of government support. And then we're waiting to hear the pandemic hit. And then all of us remember a very fateful call from the Federation in which after announcing that we won the right to be the Canadian candidate for city for 2030, we were invited to sit down and asked whether we would consider whether we could pivot to 26, given the fact that we had created a compelling plan, had secured senior government support, and we're in a region that could deliver these games in this way. All of us, I think I'm not saying anything out of the turn, were a little shocked, a little disappointed in hearing that, and could not quite get our heads around what the opportunity meant. And we all stepped aside to reflect on that and came to grips with the fact that all the things that you're hearing now are critically necessary for the survival, if not the perseverance of our community, and we went down that road. But we had no money, we had nothing. We had to do an entire bid all over again from scratch in an entirely different way without resources. And it was going to be impossible. And so I called my friends and said, would you possibly consider helping us? And the Paletta family, without hesitation, made a contribution to Commonwealth Sport Canada of $250,000 to permit us to carry on. And they did that after we asked the Calgary bid team that lost their bid and had money with Commonwealth Sports Canada consider possibly letting us use some of their money to keep our lights on, and they understandably, respectfully declined. And so it was the Paletta family that stepped up and allowed this to continue on. And we are going to begin tonight with them and with many other community leaders, many of you, I hope, to begin fundraising around these games. The private sector is going to have to shoulder a significant percentage of the responsibility for these benefits, because it will be all of you in the increase in value of property, of business, that will benefit from that. And so we all have to do it together. And so I'm delighted to introduce Angelo Paletta. His brothers Michael and Paul are here as well to talk a little bit about their involvement and their involvement going forward. Angelo?
That's great. Thanks, Lou. Thank you for your leadership. It's definitely great to be here. I'm very enthusiastic about this whole event. You know, it's amazing to hear all the different perspectives and multitude of views that's come from each and every one of you. And it's definitely increased my enthusiasm for this bid and the Commonwealth Games. Ron, thank you for the memory of Dad. I remember Dad telling me that transaction, and you recall that it was called Cargo Transit back then, before it became Fluke. So my dad always had, you know, a lot of time and respect for you, and much appreciated for the memory. Welcome everyone to this important life-changing fork in the road. On behalf of myself, my brothers Paul and Mike, which I hope everybody can see, wave guys, perfect. And the entire Paletta family and group, we look at Commonwealth Games 2026 as the catalyst for the city, region, and beyond for an economic and social recovery initiative, a rebound and healing to COVID-19 and all of its catastrophic effects on each and every one. Kevin, I borrowed your word healing. It's the first time I actually heard that, and it's really resonated with me. And I think the healing perspective should be one of our key talking points going forward, because it is definitely a healing situation. While we're better known for being Burlingtonians, and not take anything away from Burlington, what we've done and do there, our roots are clearly in Hamilton. Our late father, Pat, started his first business, the seed that forged his empire here in Hamilton. Pat met our mother, Anita, in Hamilton, and actually did business with her father. So I guess he did business with the father and got a wife as part of the deal. They were married here. All of their 4 sons were born in Hamilton. With the cooperation of City Council and members of staff, past and current, our current and future developments and buildings are in Hamilton. Today, 80% of our current projects are in Hamilton. Our Mountain View Heights, with thousands of residential units, multiple institutional users, multiple parks, environmental features, and community infrastructure, is the largest subdivision in the city, and I believe in the province and probably the country. And it's here in Hamilton. Today we are and have been Hamiltonians that cannot be denied. Proudly, we continue to be Hamiltonians. We've taken a very active and increasing interest in investment in the city, including our involvement in the downtown redevelopment project, which will host a number of the game's events. We understand the challenge the city has had historically and how much worse the pandemic has made our prospects. But beyond financially supporting the Hamilton Community Foundation's pandemic relief efforts, we felt it critical when Lou asked us to financially support this volunteer bid team so they might have a fighting chance to bring this home to Hamilton. We did so because we believe it will transform the city and its future. It will give our business community a chance to step up and lead our city council and the community overall to a better place. It is really time for us to all work together as business leaders and make our voices heard, to put skin in the game so that council and the province are convinced and understand that if they help this region rise up, we'll be right there beside them to help shoulder the load. Hamilton may be down, but in Hamilton's typical history, we are no way out for the count. Beyond our past donation to the Commonwealth Sports Canada, if the bid award is ultimately completed, the Paletta family is committed to additional substantial investment in the 2026 games. Based on our history and what I've expressed regarding our family, we believe it's incumbent on us to help and are proud to lead fundraising efforts around the games in the future. And we'll be urging each and every one of you to help us get there. Thank you.